Besides,
Yes?
this is you preparing lunch. Lunch for 1, lunch for 5.
Lunch for about 6.
6 people. Is that family, friends,
I have my
partners?
sister around, then I have friends around.
You have your sister around.
And she's in the bedroom.
Is your sister not hiding from us? So, Shawn, today Coach Times is here to have an in-depth conversation with you.
Yeah.
We know Shawn the activist, Shawn the community mobilizer. Today we want to know that Shawn, how did Shawn become Shawn? How did Shawn become the community mobilizer we see? Shawn's journey. How is Shawn the family man? How is Shawn?
Shawn the family man. Shawn does his cooking.
Shawn does his own cooking. That's good. We're all about empowerment.
It's not about Shawn sitting around. You want like the last one, the other side. I don't think it's going to be helpful.
Let's start with a conversation of when was Shawn born?
I was born 14th July.
14th July. Where?
1986.
1986.
Where I don't know, but I think it was either in a banana plantation or in a hospital.
Here in Kampala.
No, those details. Yeah, but I was born and raised in Kampala. Spent most of my childhood was between Kampala and Ongarara. And then from Ongarara.
So most of your time has been spent between those two places. I want to understand Shawn, where Shawn went to school.
Oh.
We want to know that Shawn about everything.
I went to McDonald Kindergarten, the current little angel nursery school. Then went to Peter Primary School. Though went to a series of other primary schools, but I started my period from Peter.
Okay.
Then went to Tiger High School. I finished my O-level from Peter High School. Then went to London, where I was expelled in senior 6.
Really?
So did my A-level start my A-level from Kerry High School, Mac High, in 1 year. But now they shifted, so I don't know if I still have a school where I did my A-level from. But yeah, that's...
The Shawn, the school-going Shawn, was Shawn a bright student? Was Shawn a naughty person?
I was bright, naughty, notorious. So sometimes I would not do all the exams, but still pass. I don't know how, it was magic. So I call myself Shawn the magician.
Shawn the academic magician. That's interesting. So from Mackay, you joined university?
I did join Uganda Christian University.
UCU, that is Mukono.
But dropped out. I was doing law, but dropped out. Started somewhere before I could gain anything out of that.
Is that like in your first year, first semester?
After the first semester.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was YouTube. Then I joined activism in 2012. How I started is, it was at David Kato's memorial service at, what is that hotel in? Emerald Hotel.
That's when you joined activism.
I had known a number of community members before, Biggie, Pasha, we would meet now in Bada, yes, but I'd never really been so keen in being. I'd actually promised myself never to join activism. But But after attending that event, I met Jay Muricha, and he had just started Fame Alliance. So he sold to me what I thought then was a very brilliant idea. And yeah, we started working together. I joined FEMA, where I joined as a member, then also eventually was the office administrator.
For FEMA Alliance?
Yes, I think I worked there for 2 months.
That was short.
And you find yourself?
Yeah.
From FEMA Alliance, we're seeing your journey starting out as an activist within the LGBTI movement. Where did you go?
From FEMA Alliance, I then joined TSIU.
That is TITS.
It is transgender supported. It was TITS at one time, yes, but I know it as TSIU.
Okay.
Where with Nikki?
Nikki Mawan.
Yeah. I was also the office administrator.
Okay.
And I was there from 2012 to 2014. When eventually the homosexuality bill was signed. And all hell broke loose. People started wondering what is going to happen to organizations, to individuals. And because of the fear of the unknown, TSA was closed. After Nikki left the country. But at TSA, I was also given an opportunity to train by paralegal, by Hira. So, yeah, even after TSA closed, I kept on doing my paralegal work. But, oh, I forgot something. I am a peer educator.
Like me.
You're a peer educator.
One of the original,
Yes.
one of the oldest.
TOTs.
Yes, with MAPI. So yeah, I was doing all these activities, being peer educator, being paralegal, being office admin, being very many other things that community members think I am. I don't know what they think I am. Yeah. Then when TSA closed, I continued doing my work as a peer educator and paralegal. So eventually I first volunteered at Hero, forcefully volunteered. I would go to that place and never leave.
And just sit around.
And do work, even when I was not being paid for the work I was doing. So eventually I was taken on as a staff, where I'm currently working as a paralegal, a community paralegal. And I head all the Hero of trained paralegals. There are, I think, 45 LGBTI and trained paralegals. So I'm the head boy.
You're the head boy of the paralegal class, school. It's interesting. Yeah, I would like to take you back a little bit, Shawn. I want to understand how does Shawn come out? We first of all didn't ask. Shawn identifies. We know Shawn the man. Does Shawn have a sexual orientation?
I'm a straight man.
Shawn is a straight man. Shawn, are we allowed to refer to you as a trans man during the? We understand that certain terms can be a bit strange, and it's a learning process, I think, for all of us. So when there's a place we want to understand about Shawn before Shawn became Shawn the man. Shawn who went to Uganda Christian University.
All those interesting places.
Those interesting places that you understand must have been a bit. They have those are formative years as a teenager, as an adolescent. That is a space where you come to understand yourself. And Shawn is Shawn in a Christian university that has very Christian principles. How did Shawn go about that? How do those years affect Shawn?
Those years affected Shawn in such a way that I had little information about probably who I was also. So then I identified as a lesbian. And but you know, when you're calling yourself something that you're not, you feel it. You feel
Yeah, like it doesn't, the label doesn't
there's
fit.
something that is wrong with whom you're calling yourself. So there was a lot of internal conflict within me. Of, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? And so then really, because I didn't have information, it really didn't matter much to me.
Yeah.
Because I thought I was comfortable with who I was then. But when I joined the community, actually the first day I found myself. That is when I knew that actually I was not what I was. Yeah.
So taking on the lesbian sexual orientation label was an effect of not having enough information about sexual orientations and gender identities.
Yeah. Because I didn't know what to call myself. I didn't know if that was the right thing, if it was the wrong thing, or if it was... You know, when you keep on hearing people saying, oh, that is something wrong, maybe you start also imagining, I'm also feeling wrong inside, maybe they are right. So yeah, that was then the show. I'll not tell you the name, you know the name.
You don't know the name.
You do.
You could, these are the things you want to know. Is that before you became Shawn? Who did we know then?
Then it was involved.
Oh, okay. So you come into the community during that time where David had just died. I think there was a lot of tension within the community itself. People were a bit, the idea of homophobia had just started to hit us that it actually goes that far. Yeah. Does coming into a community that is very damaged, at a very fragile stage, affect how Shawn takes on activism? We've come to, you told us earlier, you had promised yourself never to join, never to be an activist. You had a plan to be a lawyer, a plan that went somewhere else.
Which is still, no, it hasn't really gone anywhere.
Still valid.
It's still,
Yeah, but at a certain point you went off,
yes,
like
that is true.
went into some other work
Yeah.
of patriotism.
Yes.
Then,
Well, I served until the rank of lieutenant.
oh,
Wow.
interesting information.
That's why I told you it's classified information.
Yes.
That's information that could get me behind jail for a very long time.
So Shawn comes in, Shawn becomes from Yvonne to Shawn after joining the movement, after taking on work that you had said you would never do.
Yeah.
What is it about Femme Alliance that attracted you to work with it in the first place? Is it the identity you had at that time, the question, or the questioning? Because you had said you were first identified as a lesbian.
Yeah, as I talked today, I found they had quite interesting ideas.
Yeah.
And to me, what we shared, I felt I needed to be part of something like that.
There were other lesbian organizations at that time, given your perceived identity then.
But then
Why was it Femme Alliance?
I joined Femme Alliance as a transgender person.
So now, oh, you had said that the day you come into the community is that day you found yourself and like, oh.
Yes.
What is it? I need to understand that point. What was that point that made you realize, oh, no, I'm not a lesbian, I'm actually a trans
Like I
man?
said, there is always that thing you're questioning of. They have told you when you're doing when you're someone who you're not comfortable with, you feel it. So I kept on asking myself, maybe what I'm doing is actually wrong, like they are saying. Because you hear so much about LGBT, about lesbianism, bisexuality, and like, oh, that is something very wrong. So maybe then I thought that indeed it was because I didn't have any other thing to call myself. And I didn't feel very comfortable with what I was calling myself. So that is how, when I eventually met Jad, we talked, he explained to me the whole LGBTI thing. I found a blessing. That is when I found my foot.
So the information that, the conversation you had with Jim Mulucha, was the information that gave you a broader understanding of, oh, it's not just about sexuality of gays and lesbians. I am actually beyond this. That's very interesting. So you start work with the FEMA Alliance. Now, we need to also understand, how does this affect, we've not heard about Shawn's family.
Oh.
How does all this falling with Shawn's family life?
All this, my family was nowhere to be, it was not in the picture. Because I've been on my own for a long time, for quite some time. I think for almost 15 years now. So then I never cared about what they thought or what they didn't think. Actually, they didn't know what was going on in my life. But I eventually talked to my siblings. Didn't talk, sent them a WhatsApp message at 3 a.m. when I was drunk and high. I told them, you know what guys, we have a family WhatsApp. I told my brother, my big brother, my two big brothers, and my big sister. And you know what, I'm transitioning. And I told them, if you feel you don't want to associate with me after this text, I am very happy that we are parting ways like this. Actually, I never expected to get a positive response from any of them. But I was shocked.
Shawn, you say you hadn't had a confirmation or contact with your family for about 15 years.
Yeah.
But there's those formative years when, from your background, we understand Shawn went to actually very structured education systems. So I'm thinking there was your family to support you through all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where does the family break off?
The family breaks off when I joined university. Actually, the reason why I dropped out of university is because I didn't have tuition. So I was raised by very many people, my aunties, my mom, my grandparents. So it was never in a saying this home. So this holiday you'll be in this home, this holiday you'll be this. So that is how I got.
And Shawn's dad?
I have never seen my dad, so I don't know if he's alive or dead.
Okay.
So me, I choose to say he's dead.
So through all that time,
I am 28 now, and the guy has never shown up. I don't expect him to show up very soon. Because even if he showed up now, I don't think would strike it off as it would have been if he had showed up if I was 20.
Does that affect Shawn? Did that affect Shawn in any way growing up without a father?
Because we all need that father figure in your life. We all need fathers, right?
Yeah.
But because my other siblings had their fathers, so I kept on questioning where is my father. Eventually, when I learned to just give up, and no, I don't have a father. I don't know what happened to him or where, but I just decided to stop following up, questioning people and trying to seek answers because it looked like I'll never get any. Yeah.
So, what is the reason? You need to understand the reason that makes Shawn. Where does the tuition support end, and why does it end?
Like I told you, I was never raised by one person. So I had very many people contributing to my education.
Yeah.
But you know, with time people get responsibilities, and then every family has its own issues. There are those family conflicts where you find yourself as a victim of those conflicts. So I guess I was a victim of some family things.
Okay. So the time 15 years later, after not talking to your siblings for so long.
When we talk, no, when I say 15 years, I don't mean that I completely cut them off. Would high, but they never knew what was going on in my life. Would meet maybe once in a while on family occasions, but they never knew exactly what was going on in my private life. So I never thought I had anyone to explain to anyone what was going on. So I was still telling you how I sent them a WhatsApp message.
At 3 a.m. when you're drunk.
I told them, this is me, this is what I've decided. And I told them I would understand if any of them didn't want to associate with me. And I told them I would respect their decisions. But interestingly, that same night, I received a message from my sister and my brother saying, well, if that is what you've decided, then that is your decision. And I was like, what?
Have your siblings always been growing up?
They were too
were
older
you
than me.
way
So
too older?
My sister is raised me like she was my mother.
Oh.
I used to feel like she was my mother.
In this whole, when Shawn decides to, when Shawn decides to come out as a trans man, where is Shawn's mother?
My mother is in Bushiri. She's actually stable. But it's a discussion we've never had. But even when I was growing up, I used to put on boys' clothes. So I think my family thinks it's something I felt out, bro. But like, nobody has ever bothered me about why you dress or how you dress. But these days, social media is making life a little bit more complicated because everybody has access to what you're doing on Facebook. So yeah, there are questions rising up on Facebook from different unconcerned people whom I really put in their place sometimes. I forgot it was hot.
That is cooking.
Single leg.
In this one conversation, Shawn, we've not yet seen Shawn getting a partner at any level. There's no love interest for Shawn ever. How has Shawn been single for all this while?
I am not single. I'm in a relationship, a very stable relationship.
Yeah.
Though, just following the person is not here.
So Shawn is currently in a stable,
Very stable relationship.
straight heterosexual relationship. We want to understand when how was the relationship status for Shawn when Shawn was just discovering Shawn?
It was hit and run. There. Because as you know, it's very difficult for trans people to actually be in relationships where we end up with the lesbian and the trans and the lesbian. Those are the most complicated relationships I think I know. So yeah, I have had a few flings, one was serious relationships. But unfortunately or fortunately, they have not been successful.
But currently, where do we see this relationship going? Like a very serious relationship.
Maybe we'll start a family, but I don't know where. Because I know it is illegal for what we call same-sex relationships in this country. And given the situation that really understood and recognized in this country, we're still seen as same-sex couples. So what I'm saying is there's a wedding very soon because there's no wedding.
Where does Shawn see Shawn's life 5 years from now? We had talked about your career. You always wanted to be a lawyer.
Yes, I intend to pursue a law degree very soon. Very soon. Even maybe before this year ends. But 5 years, I'll be a very great entrepreneur. I intend to start business, which I might also start this year. I want to start with farming. So I have plans of starting a poultry farm. But again, I'm very thoughtful of the LGBT community members, where maybe I could employ a few LGBT persons who are serious about making their lives different or better. Yeah. And I have plans of starting small businesses really for community members. If I would get the opportunity of taking a few transgender persons to do for skills trainings. It's a tailoring, I don't know, anything with someone's interest really, where someone can start up a business in that lane and be self-sustained, because I believe what actually exposes us most to transphobia and homophobia is is economic dependence. Because most of our community members actually don't have any economic standing. They're exposed to situations that actually expose them to violations. I would say most people who are doing sex work, most transgender persons who are doing sex work, don't do it because they want it. If given an alternative, I'm not saying sex work is bad. I don't want to be quoted as saying so, but if given an alternative, it wouldn't be their first choice of what they would do.
So you have, you said you intend to start farming sometime before the year ends, during this year. Shawn, do you already have available space to you?
Yeah, I have space. I have land in Wakiso.
Oh, okay. It's very cool.
Land.
Wakiso.
Yeah.
Wakiso is very near.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. So we should be applying for labor, casual labor.
I'm going to call out. I'm going to send applications. I'll call for applications. Where people will become fund managers. I don't know what.
That's very interesting, Shawn. Shawn, when we talked earlier, we were talking about challenges that you've seen as in the trans community. We understand one of the biggest challenges that trans people actually still face falls with identity, the concept of people understanding the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity. As a trans man, what do you think about that? How is the trans community supposed to overcome this challenge?
I think as trans people we should take on the mantra ourselves to actually, because the truth is that gender identity issues in this country are almost unheard of. And unless we speak out, people will not know what it actually means. Because you don't expect, what has been happening, we've had a lot of gay people and lesbian people talking about trans issues when they themselves almost have no idea what these issues are. And so you get comments like, you're complicated people, you're people who don't understand who you are, you're confused. So I think it is upon us, and the avenues actually to do this, and we have platforms to start advocacy from. Like I was recently telling some people, I think the kind of activism now we should be doing is, like I've told you, economic empowerment is one way that the transgender identifying persons can actually become more visible. When you excel in what you're doing, people lose interest about who you are, but have more interest in the kind of work you're doing. So if we have like a non-trans person who is one of the best tailors in this country, that makes a difference. People start looking at the kind of work you do, other than who you actually are. So I think, yeah, economic independence is one other avenue that we can overcome. We can put ourselves there and tell guys, look beyond what you see, what you want to think of me. Then also, like I've said, there are very many other platforms that we can engage in that have been untapped. And we are not going to wait. We have waited for so long for that to be done on our behalf by other people, which is not forthcoming. Like places like the Ministry of Gender, that is a place I don't think any trans person has gone through to engage. As at HIRAF, we've tried to do engagements with different stakeholders, police. I usually do police interventions, and every police station I go to, at least by the time I leave, questions over a man or a woman at least have been answered. Because that's the first thing I get the moment I reach a place like this, even in my times. People of us, they don't actually ask you, they will ask themselves why you're listening, and you're like, guys, first me and talk to me. So I think as trans people, it is us to take the initiative to actually make people understand who we are. And yes, also, I think that is the biggest, that is how we're going to overcome this whole thing of people don't understand gender identity issues and mistake them for sexual orientation issues.
I think much as the trans community, transgender persons have been the face of the LGBTI movement for quite a while, there is I need to understand why there is that gap of transgender discussions are always falling behind, yet trans women have been the face of the movement.
Like I've told you, it's only not trans women, even trans men. Like I've told you, these discussions are being held by either lesbians or gay people. Okay? Now, already the world or the community knows that if a man, we quote the word man, behaves like a woman, they are gay. And if a woman behaves like a man, they are gay. Okay? So, because those discussions are being held by lesbians or gay men, that is why you're going to have, that is why the discussion on trans issues is lagging behind. Because like I've told you, even the people holding the discussions also don't know what, because there's a lot of discrimination even within the LGBTI community, where you have had issues, like I've just said, people say we are confused, our issues are complicated. So imagine, if someone is saying your issues are complicated, what kind of engagement are they doing on your behalf? Which is almost no engagement at all. They will just sit in the room, mention LGBTI, then leave people thinking that the whole LGBTI means homosexuality.
Okay. In your time, you joined the activism in 2012. That's 4 years. What has been your biggest challenge as an activist?
Oh my.
Your biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge is selfishness. Selfishness. That is within the community. I think where I've fallen out with very many people is my understanding of activism. I think is different from very many people. That whereas much someone would say, this is my organization, I started it. For whatever reasons, the biggest reasons are usually money reasons. Okay? And why actually activism is lagging behind in terms of trans advocacy or trans organizing is again the selfishness. How many trans organizations do you know in this country? And how many trans activists do you know in this country? So that we've become selfish in such a way that even us as activists, we're not actually fronting the real issues as they're supposed to be fronted. And when we try to hold the discussions with people on what are the real issues that we're supposed to be fronting, it becomes a battle. People think maybe you're being overambitious. Okay? And then also on our side as trans people, we're also selfish that for those who have started, who have transitioned, who have done hormones, this is information that we don't share with each other. So you find someone who is transitioning, but they are transitioning on their own. They have no idea what they are doing. Yet there are people who have had the opportunity to meet doctors in this country who are willing to do, the whole medical part of it, but they're not willing to share that information with the rest of the community. So that becomes difficult in such a way that what happens to that trans man who has no such information, or trans woman who has no such information? That is why you see most of these people are like mad people. They're doing self-medication. And we are looking at them and saying, oh, trans women are mad people, but we're not looking at what is the cause of this, their so-called madness. You find people, like most trans women are on hormones because they have been told family planning methods can work as hormonal treatment. So someone goes, gets an implant, and there they are on an implant, they have no idea what it's going to do to them. Okay? And to start hormones, you need to do a lot of hormonal tests and know how much hormones you need in your system. So you're here with an implant, not being monitored. That is a madness you see around.
So, in 4 years of being a community activist, your biggest challenge has been dealing with the selfishness that comes with the work.
Yeah. And then, also as an individual, I've had to cut off a lot of my social work, my social life. If you knew me then, and know me now, you can see there's a big difference. Then I would sit in a bar up to 5 a.m. These days I fear going to bars. I only go out once in a while. But it's kind of a security thing I've drawn for myself. Transitioning in a society where I have been before, you're exposed to very many violations, and you can never know who or what happened, who does what and when. Even the people sometimes you think are your friends, and the ones exactly who will expose you to those violations. So, for me not to fall victim, I have known that this is what I've decided to become, and understood that not everybody in my circles are going to understand, because I have friends in very different circles. Very many friends, and I know very many people in this town. So you're not going to expect that everyone of them is going to understand you. Okay? And you're not going to go shove it down people's throats to actually understand you. And actually some people are like, oh, you were better off when you're still a lesbian than now that you become a trans person. So, and when you keep exposing yourself to these kinds of things, you're actually hurting yourself even the most. There's a lot of psychological and emotional torture that you have to go through.
When we understand the challenge that has come with working in the community, I want to understand Shawn as a person, Shawn as a man. What has been your biggest challenge in transitioning and identifying and owning your identity?
Man, woman, will not soon go away, because I've not gotten an opportunity to start hormones. They're the most difficult thing to start, and even to get them. So the fear of starting and being inconsistent, I have just not yet started at home. So that comes with the challenge of some places you have a lot of explanation to do. And sometimes you even don't have any explanation to do. Like I've told you, I know very many people, and the kind of work I do exposes me to, sometimes you find yourself in a place where people know you. And here you are in your time.
You as the person people like, what is wrong?
So the fear of
Shawn, we're still talking about your biggest. What has been your biggest challenge as Shawn the person?
Is trying to bring that. The biggest challenge is trying to bring my two worlds together, because at the end of the day they meet. As long as you still transition in the same society that you've been born and raised in, and basically that's where your whole life has been, and you transition in that same society, there is where the two worlds contradict. So it becomes so hard to try to explain the new self about the old self to people who have known you since you were the old self. And then there's also always, there's a lot of uncertainty. Like I've told you, my life has been zeroed down to homework, because one, you don't want tomorrow to be walking around here and then someone's like, but you. So to avoid many questions about me, I don't give people opportunity to really know me that much. Even my neighbors don't really talk that much.
Has it, the fact that you had to edit your social life, you've cut out your social life, so it's basically you, your partner, your workmates. Hasn't that left you a bit psychologically broken down?
Of course it does, but like I've told you, those are the sacrifices you take to become the person that you feel comfortable being. Because again, when in your social circle there's a lot of people, you are more exposed to very many things. Of course it has a lot of, because it makes you a lonely person. Most times I'm in this house alone, now that it's just still recently that my sister came to live with me. She's going to start university. So otherwise it's a very lonely life. But you get used to it.
I guess. What has been your biggest achievement as an activist?
My biggest achievement, I think, is in line with my work. I get so much satisfaction every time I go either to police or to court and someone is released. Usually we go to people who have no idea about, who have no hope at all, who even didn't have any thought that there would be someone following up on their issues. So at the end of the day, when someone like that is out of whatever trouble they have been in, and especially because of their sexual gender identity, the sexual religion gender identity, that gives me so much satisfaction.
As a paralegal,
Yeah.
I understand that you've been you're the community liaison person, as in I think because everyone knows you, whenever an LGBT person is in trouble, the first person they'll call is Shawn. What has been your most trying case that you've had to work on with an LGBTI person?
They are very many. Each case has its own challenges. And like I've told you, sometimes you're talking to people who have no idea who you are. You just receive a phone call that the trans person who has been arrested, I don't know you do. Get to into the car and go to Bulu. So like I've told you, the first question that I usually ask, are you a man or a woman? Now, before you even deal with the issue of you have to
person, you have to talk about yourself.
So sometimes it's scary because you don't know what reaction this people are going to have. And you risk being undressed at any time. So it takes a lot of confidence and a lot of courage to actually go to police stations, identifying yourself as a man. When in your heart you know you're a trans man. So usually I ask myself, what happens if one day I am looked up and checked? That every time I'm leaving office, that thing is in my head. I'm like, God, I am going, but what happens if the worst comes to the worst? But like I've said, it takes confidence, it's learning the art of talking to those policemen. But the most challenging one is
Just want to know that case that that you had to deal with and you came home very broken because you can't get away from it. It is your work, but you had to do it and it left you a mark on you.
I think there's a case that we recently had in this year. We went to court, this person didn't have sureties. Now imagine you've reached court, you even asked for bail. I decided to stand for surety. I don't usually do that.
This year?
Yes, I don't usually do that. So at the end of the day, we could not come back with this person because court asked for 4 million cash bail, and we didn't have the 4 million. So that you keep on these people's faces in your mind, and you're like, I was their only hope. You sometimes feel like you've let them down. I wish I had a sack of money. I would have just paid the 4 million and this person goes out. So someone who would have gone out then is now still in prison after even almost 3 weeks, no, 3 months.
Because
then there was another one in Kunjiri. This was an intersex person. They were on a murder case, but they are in a men's prison. And you're like, man, there's a lot of advocacy that needs to be done, at least on the introduction of a third gender kind of setting in this prison, in these prisons. Because now this person is in prison. The men are saying you cannot be with us. They cannot take them to the women's cell. They've just put the person in the store. So yes, like I've said, each case comes with its own challenges, and I would tell you that every case I've handled has had an impact on me. Like I've told you, those cases you come home and you're like, oh yes, at least today I'm a very satisfied person that I have helped someone get out of the problem they were in. And then someone gets arrested today, then gets arrested tomorrow, gets arrested again, and that gets me thinking, what more can I do as an activist to stop such instances? And you will realize that, like I've said, economic empowerment. If this person had a job or anything to do, they would not be in those situations that expose them to being arrested again. So you have someone who in a year who has been arrested 10 times. Okay?
Yeah.
All because that they probably don't have anywhere to stay. So the moment they are released, they go to a bar. That is where they are going to spend the night. And while they're at a bar, so yeah, it's...
Shawn, you've been in the LGBT movement for quite some time, so you must understand its workings. What has been that moment that you're most proud of belonging to a community?
I think when the AHA was nullified, I remember I was in Dar es Salaam. And I was following up that case. I was actually very hurt that the day the decision was made, I was not around. But I remember we were in a meeting in Dar es Salaam. And the meeting came to a standstill for almost an hour when we got the news. I think that was the most successful part of the most that time. I was like, I am proud to have been part of all this. I am proud to be identifying with the LGBT community, and I was very proud to know that my little efforts contributed to whatever to whatever happened in that case, because I was, like I told you, I was volunteering with Hero, and actually the day that the bill was nullified is the day I started working with Hero officially. So it became that point in my life. I was like, yes, the much time I put in was not to waste, and I was proud of our courts that at least they have, for the first time I found them rational. People didn't put feelings, didn't put what, they just said on these grounds. Well, it was not nullified on all the grounds they wanted it to be nullified on, but at least court had a say and said, no, it cannot go on like that. Yeah.
As Shawn, the person, does Shawn have role models?
Oh, within the community? Or
No, generally.
I have role models, yeah. I have role models. I really admire a lot of work that Pepe does.
Pepe?
Yeah. Very many people don't understand in the community, but if you've had an opportunity to sit down and talk to him, I think you will understand why he does the things the way he does them. Yeah, and the kind of work he does that many people sometimes say they don't understand. But like I've said, sometimes we sit and judge people without knowing what actually, what the reason why they do things the way they do them. And there's also Frida. She's one person who believed so much in me, so much that, like I've told you, I was volunteering with Hero just because she gave me that opportunity, because she would call me in and give me work to do, and you know, she goes, I know you can do it, and I'm like, I go to police, how? She's like, you can do it. So yeah, she's that other one person that really I look up to. I find so much inspiration from her. I get so much inspiration from her. Then the rest, well, the rest are our usual ones.
When we try to understand Shawn the person, I think due to our growing up settings, religion plays such a big role in most of the people's lives. Does religion play a big role in Shawn's life?
I was raised in a very religious home. I was raised with my grandparents, who were very religious in the Anglican church. But I later in life had an experience that I don't believe religion is about going to church. Because I had a very nasty experience in church that I decided I'll never go back to church. Though recently someone is trying to pull me to go back to church, but a local church, and those people find them very hypocritical. But anyway, yeah, I grew up in a very religious family. And I'm very religious in my heart. It may not be in the words I speak, or in the life I lead, or in the... But yeah, I believe in God. I believe... Yeah.
I'm going to be a little bit invasive and ask, what is that experience that happened? That
I used to go to a certain church. So this particular Sunday I was asked by a church usher to get out of church because they don't accept people like me in church. I looked at this woman, looked at church, and I'm like, if this is what people who go to church do, I don't want to be part of that group. So that was in 2009. No, 2010. So I've not been to church in that moment. Yeah, I actually have not been to church. Even in weddings, I don't go to church. Even in my brother's wedding, I never went to the church section of it. I stayed home to prepare for the reception. Yeah. So that that scenario gave me. I started doubting people who actually go to church and them calling themselves the religious type of people. I think I am more religious than very many of them. Yeah.
So the impact of the discrimination you felt in that when a person who perceives themselves to be quite godly because they work in the church and everything, how did that affect Shawn's transitioning and acceptance of Shawn's self?
Then I was not transitioning, but like I've told you, I believe God is everywhere. And I believe all each one of us, like I've told you, that is how what I was raised. What I know is every individual has an individual relationship with their God. So it is up to you to either build on it or not do anything about it. So it really didn't have, what it had on me is that I stopped going to church. Physically waking up every Sunday and going to church, but it never changed what I thought about God, or it actually started making me question about these people who call themselves godly. And started asking, should I actually really believe what I'm being told by these guys, or should I just believe what I know? Yeah.
As we wind up, as a person who you're one of the trans activists, known trans activists in this community, and we've discussed the gap that exists between trans persons being the face of the LGBTI movement and the development that goes on for transgender rights. Beyond economic empowerment as a tool of closing that gap, give us a closing word on how, an empowering word on how we can further this movement, how we can grow a sustainable movement that is inclusive of everybody without leaving out certain people.
I think we should, I would say sympathy, empathy, and respect. If that is nurtured, even within the LGBT community itself, will have more meaningful actions towards the different the whole spectrum of LGBTI. And for me as a person, I'm thinking of setting up something, not an organization really, but like a youth center, where all these things can be nurtured. Where, and my biggest emphasis is going to put on transgender persons, like, because there's a lot of activism that have been done on gay, lesbian, bisexual issues, and in terms of from health to the whole spectrum. You can even see in the health service providers we have on board barely have anything they know about transgender persons. Okay, that is where we end up with trans women who are in MSM spaces, and then also us as trans persons understanding, do you really understand what being transgender means? That is also another issue that has been that happens in our community, where you have, I won't use the word gay bottom, boys who, because they can swing a hand, they identify as
Trans women.
So I intend to start up like a transgender center, where where it is going to be upon us to actually bring out this information to people. What does being a transgender person mean to you? As if you identify, if you say you're trans, what does that mean to you? It's not about what it means to me, what your being trans means to me, but what does it mean to you as that person, that individual? And then do advocacy on different levels. Health. if we're talking about trans health, what do we mean? We don't mean ARVs, we don't mean condoms, we don't. What does trans health actually mean? When you're talking about trans health, what is that? What are those services that we want to get from the health service providers? I'm not talking about malaria treatment, but there are very many other kind of medical issues that people have that need, we need to talk to a practitioner, but because they don't understand they first have to understand the person before they understand what is actually going on with the person. Then yeah, like I've said, do advocacy on very many other things, like the identification issue. We have a big issue with IDs, where very many transgender persons fear to go for the national ID registration process because of, again, that fear of what is it going to mean if I go in a line and try to get an ID. And many people actually still don't believe that they can actually get an ID as a transgender person. Yeah, so if we have more sympathy, empathy, and respect for each other and each other's decisions and choices, I think we would become better activists and better community members, really.
Okay. Thank you very much, Shawn.
Thank you.